Hello all, this is the Owl. Or then again, maybe not. Last time we tackled the Hello Abyss mode and it wasn't good. But as I've mentioned before, underneath that terrible game is another game entirely, accessed via the Deep in Abyss mode. Now, I went into this expecting a short, snacky little fan service extra mode that I could burn through in an afternoon. What I got was something quite different. Let's take a look. Now, before we get going, two things. First up, as I've mentioned before, this is an organic playthrough. It's not a speedrun. It's not some sort of pro series. This is me going through the game blind, warts and all. I'm not looking at forums, I'm not looking at guides, I'm not looking at FAQs. So it's entirely possible that I will miss secrets, take unoptimized paths, and suffer lots of silly damage and deaths. Secondly, I should elaborate on something a bit unfortunate that happened. See, my first attempt at this mode ended in tears when I essentially bricked my run, entering a part of the game I call Moth Hell. No, not that, which we'll get to a bit later. Now, that actually would have made for a pretty funny part of the video, but unfortunately, as the folks on Discord might recall, this is where my recording software somehow pooped the sheets, and I didn't get any footage of the latter half of my first run. Regardless, it's not important, as I decided to restart the run from scratch, attempting to make, shall we say, better life choices this time around. Again, I'll talk you through what happened when we get there. And with that out of the way, it's time to dive. First up, we get a character design screen that, it doesn't really have much in the way of options. But after a bit of fiddling, Fukuro is born. Let's get cracking. We get a brief intro, and let me just play you a little bit of the music here.
それらの物語に登場する者たちは皆アビスの魔力に魅せられ奈落の底を目指す。
Yeah, this game's OST is kind of a banger. Soon we're in the orphanage, and yes, I know, I've been missing the chance to say orphanage for a while now. Near. We are a Belle, a trainee cave raider, and we get to meet a few familiar faces. There's Jiruo, Shigi, Nat, Raoul, Dorothea, Tiare? Wait, what? Oh, right. Fan mode. See, Deep in Abyss actually introduces us to a bunch of new characters to the game world, and this is done in order to accomplish the little self-contained story that Tsukushi wanted. Alright, let's see where you're going with this, and before too long, we are made into red whistles and embark on our first cave raid together. Oh, this should go swimmingly. Before we head down, I take a stroll around Orth, or at least its menus. These are substantially more fleshed out than they were in Hello Abyss. The guild gives us some season pass-esque quests, which, spoiler, I barely bothered with. The supply shop sells a bunch of stuff like picks and hatchets, and you'll note the green bar next to items. That will come into play very soon. Lastly, the relic appraisers. We'll get back to them. Before too long, we are in the abyss with the 3 new characters and we start exploring. Oh, that's new. We spot a handful of creatures called horncriers. You know, those cursed bastard deer things that kept one-shotting my ass in Hollow Abyss. Yeah, let's give those a wide berth for now. One thing to note is that we are level 1, while Rikor started at level 5. This means that a lot of the things she could do, Fukuro can't. Not yet. I can't dodge, I can't lunge while climbing, etc. And no, of course I did not take silly damage on multiple occasions because I was trying to dodge while I didn't have it. Yeah, we set about exploring some more, and now note that green bar on my pickaxe has decreased. Ugh, yup. So this should have been explored way more in Hollow Abyss. Deep in Abyss operates on a pretty damn aggressive degradation system on a lot of your equipment. Not armor, fortunately, but your weapons, your fishing rods, etc. And there's no way to manually repair aside from visiting Orth. It's something to be acutely aware of, especially early on, as right now, picks and other gear are prohibitively expensive. Don't let stuff break if you can help it. Later on, you'll hit Scrooge McDuck levels of wealth and then it's a bit less of an issue. The final thing to keep in mind is weight. You can carry 10 kilograms, which can be expanded somewhat as you level. This sounds like a lot, but between your weapons, your armor, and essentials like rope, you actually don't have much wiggle room here, especially when you start getting higher tiers of armor. Make sure to stash useful, but not immediately essential materials, and don't carry around 10 save game items and 20 ropes like I may or may not have done. Eventually, we find Raoul clinging to the cliffside for dear life. How this happened, we have no idea. And while we attempt to save him, we are not successful. And Raoul is spared going through life with those eyebrows and plunges down to his assumed death. Huh, did the Made in Abyss fan mode just do something interesting? And actual characterization, both in terms of our interactions with Tiare and Jiruo on return? Wasn't this game supposed to be, you know, bad? Huh. And this is when I realized that this mode wasn't just a snacky little fan service extra. This was the game, proper. Hollow Abyss was just the tutorial, and kind of a crap one at that. And then something occurred to me. Something quite odd. Let me see if I can walk you through it. And warning, we're about to get a little meta and a lot crazy. So, Hollow Abyss mode runs up to Rikor and Reg leaving the Seeker camp and heading down to layers 3 and 4, which, if you remember correctly, is where the story in the manga actually started getting good. See, Made in Abyss was not a huge success at launch, and it wasn't until Tsukushi, acting on advice from his staff and publisher, introduced a substantially darker tonal shift and an entirely new character, which is where Made in Abyss really took off and became the series that we love today. And this is where the theory gets interesting. Hollow Abyss mode goes right up until exactly that point, the pair leaving the Seeker camp. And much like the manga, this is where the game takes a substantial and sudden left turn and heads straight towards, well, being good, becoming Made in Abyss, essentially. Does this mean that Hollow Abyss was deliberately designed to be as bad and as janky as it was to contrast with Deep? No, probably not. Could Tsukushi have suggested an endpoint for Hollow Abyss, or possibly even suggested the game be structured like this for the release? That's a fascinating question that I really hope someone asks him one day. Anyone on Twitter with a bit of Japanese want to give it a whack? Because, yeah, we know a few things about Tsukushi at this point, and one of the big ones is that he likes to screw with people. It's a quality that I definitely identify with, and whether the structure of Binary Star is an ingeniously subtle and yet profound bit of meta self-referencing, or if it's just an odd coincidence, it's certainly something interesting to keep in mind. Because again, the structure of the manga and the structure of the game, well, there's a resonance there. Anywho, let's get back to it. So, we're charged with finding an unexplored area on Layer 1, which just basically means wander around until you find the quest marker. And this brings me to the point where I basically bricked my last run. Let's see if I can explain. As I mentioned, Fukuro's first outing ended in disaster. I put my skill points into the wrong stuff, and I also made a beeline for the goal of this quest, which in turn got me stuck in a very nasty place with all my weapons destroyed, no way to make more, and all my healing items depleted. And then the game auto-saved. So let's chalk that up as some kind of prophetic dream. Maybe Fukuro is Wazukian's long-lost daughter. Who knows? Either way, on this run, I was going to do things a little differently. And that brings me to the 5 rules of cave raiding. Rule number 1, XP is king. Not only does it give you skill points, but it gives you more HP. Submit all relics you have to the Relic Appraiser in Orth, as this gives you a decent amount of XP and cash. Before too long, you'll have more skill points than you know what to do with, and enough gold to afford a nice little house down on Layer 2. But for now, you're on a budget. Don't be afraid to grind a little bit. All nodes respawn when you enter Orth, so if you're struggling, explore the areas you know, grab all the relics, those nodes with the red sparkles and the tingly-wingly noise produced when you're in close, and turn these in, rinse and repeat. Node spawning is a bit randomized, and the rate of spawn of relics does seem to slow down on the early layers when you get further in the game, but for now go ham. Secondly, rule number 2, evasion beats confrontation, at least early on. Combat, if at all possible, should be avoided in favor of just giving monsters a wide berth. Weapons degrade fast, stuff hits hard, and it's too easy to put yourself in a hole for minimal gains. This also applies to skill point allocation. Your first priority should be the ability to lunge while climbing, dodging, and rope climbing speed. This will change as we get further in, but for now, yeah, focus on traversal and avoid fighting if at all possible. Rule number 3, don't fear the Reaper. And by this, I mean you have an autosave whenever you enter a new area. Don't be afraid to walk around, explore, wipe everything out, and then die and respawn, knowing roughly what lies ahead. This will come in handy on the lower layers. Rule number 4, always bring rope. Always. While ropes you set up don't persist between trips back to Orth, they allow you to take substantial shortcuts, reach relics that you'd otherwise have a tough time getting to, and also allow you to regain stamina while climbing. Keeping this in mind, I did a single loop of the known areas of Layer 1, with the only zone I avoided being the tree and fossil abode because nope. The Grand Bridge Way, however, looked really accessible, but I got jump scared again by a hammerbeak, unintentionally yanked my controller off the cable, and it killed me. Oh, here's what that looks like. Doopy-doo, nothing too bad, doopy-doo. Oh, holy crap, why? And that brings me to rule number 5. Primeval creatures are bad, yo. But again, don't be afraid of death. Remember, we have a special relic called the autosave, and this wonderful device will rewind time whenever we cark it. So, with Fukuro's head restored, I decide to explore the stone arc. Ooh, what's that? Oh, it's a side quest. A busted mail balloon contains a letter from a dying cave raider to his family. Huh, well, let's go turn that in back in Orth. Turning in the letter gives us this. We learn that the author was a bit of a bastard, but when he thought he was dying, he left a really sweet, loving farewell note to his family, which they have now, despite him actually being alive. Yep, he survived. That's... You know, I am really supposed to hate you, game. Didn't you see the Steam reviews? Stop being charming, damn it. Anywho, we turn in the relics we've gathered, getting us some more skill points. And now it's time to return to the scene of our defeat. Before we head out, I stop by the fleet, grab the poison resistance charms which can be attached to armor, stash excess items in my chest, and add a few more skills. Ooh, slower hunger decay. Yep, I'll take that. Before too long, we are back at Jumping Rock, and I wind up getting into a fight with Horncriers, which I win handily. Their attacks are slow and highly telegraphed, and they're not exactly tanky. This is pretty funny, as moving forwards, Horncriers are built up as some sort of major threat on Layer 1. I then get a bit stuck, as I'm sure others did here too. The quest marker is somewhat deceptive. In order to get there, you'll need to traverse the cliff face over a gap on one of the plateaus as you make your way down. You know you're in the right spot when you get a cinematic showing us fleeing from a Horncrier. Why? Seriously, just smack it up. But no, we take refuge in a cave with, oh, it's Tiare. Now, this is the zone that killed me last time, and the reason I call it Moth Hell is because it's full of moths, and is also hell. See, these little murder flies love to spawn in when you are trying to make your way up a difficult ascent, are trying to fish, and especially when you're climbing and trying to wait out the curse. They don't hit especially hard, but they can poison you, and more annoying, the longer you spend climbing, the more spawn. And if too many spawn, or if one gets into the wrong place, they will start to block your pathing and then you're dead. You will absolutely have to control their numbers, which is bloody irritating, as not only does this degrade your weapon, but it drains stamina. And of course, stamina does not recharge while you are free climbing, and hitting stuff while climbing is imprecise at best. Yeah, I got completely bricked here, as I would have multiple moths swarming around me whenever I tried to climb, and with no lunge, I would have no way of surviving. This time though, we go in prepared and rock the Casbah. I set up ropes wherever I can to allow for easy ascents and descents. I grab some relics, and in between exploring, we get a few cinematics developing the friendship between Fukuro and Tiare, as well as a bit of character development. This dude has a weird history, narrated by an oddly familiar voice.
ね、ティアル君。それ素敵だよ。君がこれからアビスと一つになってこのまま最後まで見ててあげるよ。
Eventually though, we do escape Moth Hell. With the quests complete, we get a prompt to climb up, and when we do, we are rescued by Hablog. Yay! Surely this will qualify us for blue whistles? Back at the orphanage, Jiro congratulates us on surviving, and tells us that we can go out and explore Layer 1. Well, thanks dude, but I kind of already have. We also get some more story, as Tiare and Fukuro become firm friends, both aiming to become white whistles. Nope, not going to make the obvious joke here. That will come into play much, much later. And with that, we call it a day. And in real life, I call it a night. Let's take a short break.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
And we are back. I spend a while exploring, including clearing the tree and fossil abode at last, and the wind-riding windmill, where I help a traveler called Dechuanga? Yeah, I have no idea. That name, man. We reunite him with his bodyguard, and by now, I'm getting pretty used to dealing with moths, stingers, horn criers, and of course the occasional bamboo mine. But one thing to remember, for your own time here, try to get fishing as soon as possible, especially the devilfish. You can safely flog the meat, but make sure to keep the livers. Also, make sure to collect and store the eggs from dead stingers. Trust me on this. You'll thank me later. Man, is this what Rico and Co were doing off screen the entire time? No wonder she buggered off. Regardless, completing the quest seems to have been my objective, as doing this teleports me back to Orth. Thanks, I guess, but I wasn't quite done exploring yet. My next quest involves helping Nat and Dorothea with her evaluation. And we get a lot of little tidbits about Rico, who Dorothea is a massive fangirl of, and Nat has a bit of a crush on. I must say, while this does skirt the edges of being a straight-up tongue bath of the original franchise, it is pretty nifty to see people's reaction to Reg and Rico's quest after the fact. But eventually, we wind up at the wind-riding windmill again, where we find some of Raoul's stuff, which again teleports us back to Orth. By this point, I am now floating a ton of skill points, but as I'm still a red whistle, I simply cannot access any more skills. This is a little crap, but once I do get promoted, I'm going to have all of the skills all at once. Our next quest, Tiare and I are sent out to hunt and kill a Silkfang. Ooh, finally we'll get to fight one of these things outside of a cinematic. And it's a complete pushover. It's tanky, sure, but like the Horncryer, its attacks are really slow and really easy to evade. It'll basically spawn a bunch of threads which will immobilize you if you touch them, but they're easy to see and avoid, and it can't leave its own circle of webs. So if things go banana-shaped, you can just leg it. As with most creatures, stay on the flanks and the arse, and it's really easy. Once this thing is dead, I am dispatched to finish some side quests, including getting a bunch of eggs and fish livers, and before I know it, I am being personally evaluated by Jiro himself, and he insists that we take the annoying route around past Twin Falls. Ugh. Just make sure you have plenty of rope. Apparently killing that Silkfang caused more to emerge, as Layer 1 now has a whole bunch of them, Horncryers, and a huge bird-like creature that unfortunately I cannot get close enough to analyze. Regardless, I am able to get all the fish livers and the eggs I need, so it's time to head on home. Except, this is where one aspect of the game that annoys the pants off me rears its ugly, stinky little head. The jank. Probably my best example is this. If you leap off a cliff and hit a climbable wall, Fukuro will automatically grab on, provided you haven't fallen too far. However, if you instinctively hit the jump button again, instead of bounding upwards or downwards, you'll just let go and fall to a hilarious death. This happened more times than I would like to mention, especially in the Twin Falls and adjacent areas, which is why I tend to avoid this route going forwards. Learn to fear these jumps, as they tend to be a bit of a crapshoot, and if you're going to need to do more than one in quick succession, you will probably want to burn a save game item. And speaking of silly killer jank moments, there's what I hope is just a bug, involving trying to mine nodes on rock faces. If you are in free climb mode, and the node is slightly below you, beware, because occasionally you'll just let go after gathering and at least you'll leave an interestingly shaped crater. At last we're done with this horrible place and I make it back to Orth, I sell, I skill and I save, and soon we get our next quest. Oh boy. So, Tiare has gone AWOL, and myself, Nat, and Dorothea are charged with looking for him. But when we emerge, we can see that there are now a lot of Silkfangs scattered around Layer 1. Treat them like hazards and avoid them. They aren't very dangerous and you can easily escape, but they are frustratingly tanky, and the gear we have right now makes them just too annoying to whittle down. It's not worth the picks. And eventually, as we explore, we learn that, bollocks, Tiare is gone, and Jiruo instructs us to just come on back to Earth. We get a short cinematic showing us that Tiare is now missing an eye and is also in correspondence with that strangely ominous and familiar voice from earlier. There's certainly something weird going on here, but we won't learn more for quite a long time. Arriving back in Earth, we tie up some loose ends, realize that we are pretty wealthy and have more skill points than we know what to do with. I will note that, to the game's credit, while a lot of the quests are very much go to A, collect B, kill C, and investigate D, they are framed with pretty enjoyable stories and interactions, involving both the classic cast and the new additions. For example, Detchuanga shows up again, poisoned by whatever bit him in the abyss. We are charged with collecting some herbs and heal him up, but when we run into him again, we learn that he is now obsessed with the abyss and has abyss-altered eyes. That is a really cool bit of world building and attention to detail. Anyone who loves the lore of the abyss will lap this stuff up, as other people have also been altered by the abyss. For instance, Orzen's bizarre appearance and stature stems from a general corruption by the curse. Cool. And then we get our next main quest, which represents a point where the plot really starts moving. We are told to investigate an unknown creature that has been running amok on Layer 1, all the way down in the multi-layer hill zone. Thanks, but no thanks. Oh wait, Jiruo promises us that if we can beat it, he will promote us to Blue Whistle. Bloody finally! Okay, let's get this done. I mean, how hard could it be? That Silkfang was a cakewalk. Fortunately, I have a decent stockpile of bandages. Let's go and take a look. By now, I am really getting used to the feel and flow of Layer 1. I am starting to find shortcuts and understanding how the different zones interconnect. Here's a hint: never go to Twin Falls if you can help it. That route is balls. I make my way down to the multi-layer hills, grabbing relics and the like as I go, and sure enough, before too long, I spot... Wait, it can't be. These mysterious robotic guardians mostly exist down on layers 6 and 7, and the fact that one has made its way up here is disquieting. I'll admit, this is the point where I started getting really sucked into the story. And to make matters worse, there's something a bit off about this one, with its face panel resembling a certain arch-villain, and hell, it even flares with violet energy for a second. Huh. Now, before you get stuck into the fight, make sure that you save your game. You can do this via the little mail balloons you can either buy or assemble. This marks the first time I actually did this, and I should honestly do it more often. Or, better yet, not lug around a dozen of these save game items with me. They're actually kind of heavy. But it's time for our first real boss fight, and this one is actually somewhat challenging. In retrospect, I should have invested in a ranged weapon by this point. Gaburon Jr. here has a few different attacks, and you'll have to learn to read what he's about to do based on how he moves, because he can push your poop in very quickly if you're not careful. Attack number 1, and the one you'll learn to hate, involves him shoving out his arm, and then firing a reg-like cable. Then he whirls it around like that ridiculously dangerous playground game that I forget the name of. Wipeout? I think it's Wipeout. You know, where one kid stands in the center with a rock tied to a long piece of rope and then spins around and around while all the kids standing in a ring around them try to jump over without breaking a leg. Do kids still play this? I bloody hope not. And wait, what am I on about? Anyway, you can sort of roll under the attack, but the window for doing this is really precise, and either I'm just bad or I've played too much Dark Souls recently because, man, I just could not nail the timing. The first hit would always catch me, and beware, this can hit you multiple times, so make sure not to roll in towards him. Chances are you'll end up eating hits from this quite a bit, but as long as you can avoid the follow-up, it's not a massive problem. Still, maybe practice your dodging here. You'll need to know it later. There will be a test. His second attack involves him dragging his arm back and then spinning around rapidly, hitting everything in melee range. It's easy to see coming, easy to avoid, but do not get hit by this. Still, this attack is why you want to stay close to the robot, because you want to bait this out. It gives you an opening to heal or attack. His third attack looks like the first attack, but he just fires his arm right at you and retracts it. It comes out fast, is bloody hard to dodge because you are anticipating the other attack, but it doesn't hit that hard. His final attack involves him firing a cannonball straight up into the air. Watch for the shadow. It's not much of a threat, but do not let this hit you. The boss has quite a lot of HP, so you'll need to move in, hit him a few times, try to bait out his close range whirl, then move back, avoid his attack. Don't forget to heal when you have an opening. He is actually quite a fun first boss, and once he dies, I chalk up the win, then make my way back to Orth, and at long last, I am a full-fledged blue whistle. Yay! Bell Chero, don't be a wet blanket lady, and also, do you need to talk to someone about this? Because your fascination with hanging people up naked, that's not normal. Regardless, we are given our next quest to investigate a corpse weeper nest. And while doing this, we'll also be able to look for clues about Tiare. All of this will require us to find our way down to layer 2. Okay then, what waits for us down there in the darkness? What is the deal with Tiare, his eye, and the mysterious and yet familiar voice we keep hearing? What exactly was that interference unit-like thing, and why did it look a bit Bond-druidish, Bond-druidic? Layer 2 is where this game really takes off, but that is a story for next time. Thanks for watching. I want to give a big thanks to my patrons Astrixit Gaming, Rage Against My Hairline, Burier, Cheerful Satanist, Rafferty, and Crazy. You folks are just the absolute best. If you enjoyed this video, why not stick around? There's quite a bit more like this and tons more coming down the pipe. If you want to help us out and maybe buy me a new controller, you could always head over to our Patreon. And if you want to come, shoot the shit, give feedback, or just talk about cool nerdy stuff, you could always come over to our Discord. It's been popping off as of late. Cheers, my friends. Take care, and I'll see you next time. This is the Owl, signing off.